Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/usingyourpower. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. For this episode, we would like to recommend The Alchemist, a fable about following your dream by Paulo Coelho.
Welcome to Using Your Power. I'm David Wiebe, and joining me is
Maveen, Kaura.
Hey, Maveen, Kaura, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good, David. How are you?
Great,
First time I
thanks.
think I've ever heard you use my full name.
Yeah, maybe. I'm powered up, man.
Are you?
Looking
Excellent.
forward to this conversation. Yeah.
Excellent. So, what's your day been like?
You know, I've been working on a song. I've been working on a presentation that I'm going to be sharing on Sunday at the Question. Been working on a few posts for some other clients and things that I'm doing. So, yeah, it's been a fairly productive day.
Nicely done. And maybe we can hear this song of yours. Potentially, our listeners can have an opportunity to maybe get a little sample someday when you're done.
Sure, yeah, we could maybe link it up or send it out via email.
Yeah, I think that'd be kind of neat.
That'd be cool. Definitely. I've been trying to work on one single per year. Now I might be playing a bit of catch up. Like I'm kind of thinking about releasing 3 different versions of this same song potentially. So maybe it'll work out that way. I'm not sure yet.
What is that, like an EP remix album you're
Yeah,
putting together
almost.
here?
I see so much potential in people repurposing the material in the music industry. I think this is one of the things that independent artists don't do that a lot of professional musicians do, which is they repurpose their music. So they'll release live versions, acoustic versions. They'll do a commentary of it. They'll release an instrumental version, a karaoke version. And I see a lot of potential in that. Like that creates more of a presence for what you're doing. In this case, it would be a slight, probably reimagining of the same song. So like an acoustic version, an EDM version, and a rock version. They might be the same song, but very different also. That's the vision, at least.
Right on. So almost getting to that like DJing kind of field for yourself too, while you're making different instrumentals or I guess beats for the different songs as well.
Well, I'm certainly not spinning records or anything, but I have the ability to compose, so I can I can pull in some of the other programs that are out there. There's a lot of great low cost or free DAWs, digital audio workstations that are available, and I can produce on those just as much as I can on my regular setup, which is Traction. So, there's a lot of great software that makes it really easy to produce electronic beats these days.
Awesome, man. So I like what you kind of said, because what you've just been talking about is the exact opposite of what we're going to talk about today.
It kind of is, yeah.
You've been talking about, wealth creating activities. One of the things that I know we're going to talk about today, I think we got about 10 good points on this, and we're going to talk about minimum wage activities. So the exact opposite of what you thought we're talking about. So it's kind of a nice little segue into what we're going to talk about, which is kind of neat. We didn't even plan for it. So
why are we talking about this though?
Well, the idea was, I know we've been pretty deep into some heavy topics lately, and we want to really kind of get into the, the entrepreneurship, a little bit more talks, a little bit more into those business talks, and really help our listeners focus on things that are going to make them more productive and make them more business minded and kind of get them to their results. We don't want to always have our listeners trying to think in, spiritual deepness. We really want them to also see some impacts in their business life and personal life, and let us know what's going on, what they're able to do. So even with some of the some of our other talks we did was when we talked about different activities to create $100 of income. This kind of lines up with that, right? In a way, if you think about it, we want to just give our listeners a different way to think and change maybe what they don't like. That's not necessarily getting them to their goals and results that they're looking for. So I guess, really talking about minimum wage activities and how we continue to do things that we're comfortable doing and how we can maybe change that thought process.
So in a way, it's actually not like the complete opposite of wealth creation, because entrepreneurs listening to this episode could potentially identify things they're doing that they should stop doing or start delegating.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true too. That's a good way of looking at it. I never thought about that, but you're right.
Well, the way you described it, that's exactly what I thought of. I was like, huh, it could work that way too. So, but yeah, I guess using your power within, the realm of minimum wage activities as well. What would that look like? So I think that's another important consideration that we're going to explore.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love what you said there. And you make me think about different ways, even things that I'm saying I may not always consider the other side. So, that was one of the things that when we put the show together, was really to push the envelope for each other as well as our listeners, and have them, see things differently than they already see, and just help them envision things that could be better for them. And this is the kind of idea, right? Maybe getting people away from doing the things that aren't creating the income and start focusing on things that do create income for them.
Absolutely. So where are we going to start off with this one?
You can go first. That's not a problem with me.
Sure. Well, I was going to touch on pretty much activities that anyone can do. I think that's one way of defining minimum wage activities. So in other words, anybody could probably shuffle papers and put them into a file folder pretty easily. Just about anybody could learn to use WordPress and figure out how to schedule a post. That one might be a little more involved, but still very, very straightforward. Anybody can be a janitor if they've got their limbs and mobility. That you could clean up a place. There's a lot of things like that where pretty much anyone can do them, and that's why they're minimum wage jobs. If you really think about it, like the easier it is to do, the less you're going to be paid for it. The more difficult it is, generally, the more you'll be paid for it. So that's one way of thinking about the minimum wage activities.
Right. And you're right. Typically when you're more a consultant in an industry, you'll make more money as well, right? Mm-hmm. If you're the business owner, you'll make more money than the employee as well. So, those services that you talked about, for example, being a janitor, we need janitors. We need people who are willing to go ahead and do these activities that a lot of other people are not willing to do, because we do need a clean environment at work to work in and be productive in, right? Because who wants to work in a messy environment, being your desk or being your office?
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I think a lot of jobs in society are really important, and definitely we shouldn't take away we're not trying to undermine their importance, but if it's something that anybody can do, that means that you are replaceable. It kind of connects with my next point too. Jobs where you can be easily replaced, that's generally a minimum wage activity as well. So, if you step out of line, there's really a better chance that you're going to be fired, not less of a chance that you're going to be fired, because there's fewer consequences for the employee. The employer. So if you're an employee of a company and you're being paid minimum wage, that's something to think about. You step out of line, well, there's no reason for them to keep you around, because they can probably find someone to replace you pretty easily.
Right. And, just kind of working on your point here, because one of my points is working a job as well. And the way I'm going to say this is a little bit different. I think there's two things that we can look at. I think if you're working a job, there's nothing wrong with it. If you own a business, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. Yeah. Now, just looking at just the idea of working a job, I'm saying that is a minimum wage activity, and I'm going to change what I say with one word. And it's working at a job with a purpose. Now that takes away from that minimum wage activity thinking. Now you have a purpose on why you're going to work, and you're learning something new. Maybe you're networking, and it's just having a slight change in the way you think to increase the activity, increase the maybe what you're able to accomplish at work. So just in that small way of thinking, you can go to work just to be at your 9 to 5 and go home and be content, or you can have a reason or a purpose. Kind of like what you were saying on our last episode as well. If you have a purpose, you're going to do those things and do them to the best of your abilities.
Seth Godin has that book, Linchpin. It sounds like such an esoteric thing, or I've heard podcasts where people are like, I've never heard that before, but like everybody's heard that phrase, you're the linchpin of the operation, right? I don't think too many people haven't heard of that. It's basically saying you're essential. Without you, that thing would not go forward. That plan would not be carried out. That goal could not be accomplished. So that's what that means. So I think what you're talking about, Maveen, like you're not going to instantaneously become essential to the company overnight just by doing one little thing. But one little thing compounded over time, year after year, will make you that kind of person that's more valuable. And now you will have more say. So, if before I was talking about people that could be easily replaced, you're going to become a person that's less easily replaced because you think your own thoughts, you have your own opinion, you're bringing value to the company in the ways that others are not.
You're right. And as I wrote down my word, you actually just said, you said your own thoughts. And what I wrote down right now was the word mindset. You're right. It's going to take a while to develop that mindset to be the best employee that you can be at your job, right? And it's going to take time to develop that, but with a purpose behind it and not just saying, hey, I'm going to my 9 to 5. I'm content. I'm happy with what I'm doing. Once you develop that purpose, you develop the mindset to be the best employee that you can be and give back to the company that's giving you a chance and who's paying you these hundreds and thousands of dollars a year potentially to be the best employee. So, having a different frame of mind, having a reason to go in daily, not just for money. Obviously, it's very nice to have that paycheck at the end of every 2 weeks or at the end of every month, depending on your pay structure. But when you go in with a purpose, you really want to make what you do valuable for others around you as well. Make yourself valuable to the company. And if your company does let you go because you had a purpose, it's very easy for you to find another job or create another job for yourself, especially in this kind of environment where right now a lot of people say we're in a recession. And this is when you find people going and working for themselves. More people are out there inclined to, develop their own businesses right now because they see the purpose within themselves.
That's one of the things that can happen as you become a linchpin is you might be let go of because your thinking is too different or you're being a little too revolutionary, at least more so than management or the executive level people are comfortable for. So, that's one of the reasons that could also happen. You might begin looking for a job, but it's also entirely possible that you'll need to look for a job because you're going to be let go of for being essential. It's a really weird paradox in a way.
Right. And, it's interesting. I actually had never heard the term linchpin until I heard Seth Godin use that concept and that term and to kind of explain, to his listeners and his followers kind of what that meant to him and how that, what that meant to them as well, right? Because he's not just writing for himself; he's writing to have his readers and his readership really understand the concepts that he's explored and learned as well, right? So, I think the idea of being a linchpin and understanding that you're a valuable and important aspect of the business and part of the business, and a lot of times I know people say, and I've said this before too, and it's really negative thinking that I can be replaced, my job is replaceable. If you treat your job as just a job, you're right. Your job is replaceable. Anybody can do your job. We know that there's 1,000 people out there that can be the janitor. But like Michelangelo said, if you're going to, sweep the streets, then sweep the streets with passion. And if you're going to paint, then paint with passion, with a purpose.
Now, here's something that's really interesting. Entrepreneurship, especially early on, can be a minimum wage activity. In fact, it can be less than minimum wage. This is why I don't advocate everybody go into it. I think that's what people think when I say there's so many alternative ways to make money, you can figure it out. I'm not saying get into business. I'm not saying start a business because business is long term. I took a big risk in like 2014 where I had probably no more than $500, $600, $700 coming in per month. And I could have chosen at that point to take a job. Instead, I decided to take a risk and a chance on myself and continue to build my business. So throughout that year, might have been a tough time, but it paid off long term. So it was worth doing. But I think that's the same experience many people will have is it'll be a minimum wage activity or perhaps even less when you're first getting your business set up because the opportunities are not just going to come overnight and instantaneously.
Yeah, you said it very well. I fully agree with you on that. You have to look at what you can do versus what you want to do or what you're going to do, right? So you're right. When anytime you're setting up a business for yourself, especially as an entrepreneur, you really have to look at where you are. Maybe even consider the fact maybe you can set up a on the side business and have your full-time job, or maybe have a part-time job and set up your business on the side, right? I know for years now that's kind of what I've done. I've always had a full-time job, but in order for me to understand where I wanted to go with my business and business ideas, I took that time while I was at work to continue to learn and study and develop business plans and business ideas and concepts that I needed to learn. I went and studied those concepts while I was still at work, getting paid for a great job that I was doing for my employer. But, if it was during any slow time, I wouldn't, slack off. I'd actually go online quickly and start reading different articles that could help me be a better employee as well as a better entrepreneur in the future as well.
And obviously that's helped you a lot. And it's also great that, you explore different resources than I explore. Like we do have a meeting spot as far as, you and I have both listened to Pat Flynn, for example. So there are podcasts like that where we've both listened to them, but you've listened to some stuff I haven't, and I've listened to some stuff you haven't, which is part of what makes our conversations so interesting too, is the difference in the input.
Absolutely, right. And that's kind of the thing that we bring that's gonna expand our minds as well, right? So that's where we get away from that minimum wage thinking, even not just having activities, but we get away from that thinking because, I can bring different experiences and different thought processes to the table, and then you do the same thing through your learning and your experiences as well, right? And those are kind of the things that we bring. We have these conversations, and they're very open, and sometimes they can get heated, and sometimes they don't get heated, right? But in the end, we sometimes say, hey, you know what, you're right. Or, I never thought of it that way. Because one of the things that as we started this conversation, that's exactly what happened. I had said one thing, you agreed with it. And then you said, well, you just kind of proved my point. You just kind of already said what I just said. So, and I said, you know what, you're right. So that allowed me to say, hey, you know what, I grew from that experience, right? But I allowed myself to not be stuck in my own thought process always. And I said, you know what, if David's saying something, I'm going to listen to what he's saying. I'm going to see if it really makes sense. And if it does, I'm going to, grow from that, and which I just did.
Definitely. And another way of, I think, very easily identifying like a minimum wage job, or at least in and around minimum wage, is jobs with a high turnover. Generally, if people are coming and going, it's because they can be replaced, and that the company's not going to suffer in a huge way for replacing those people. Or, the executive leaders are just kind of dumb and they don't know what they're doing, and they fire people left, right, and center without knowing the actual cost of that. Because turnover can be a very expensive thing in many businesses, trying to replace and train and get people back in. Like the onboarding process can be very costly, but a very easy way generally to find a minimum wage job is to find one where people are coming and going in and out of the job, and the boss doesn't really think that there's any major consequences to that happening. I was in a job like that. I was at a laptop outlet retailer, and I was in sales, but I mean, there was no incentive really for me selling anything or doing anything, because my paycheck was pretty much going to be exactly the same. Only difference was how much time I spent at the store. So that's kind of having been there, it's kind of a sad state of affairs, at least for me. Maybe for others, it could be a stopgap for income. If you don't have income coming in, it's really not a bad thing to quote unquote sell out to a minimum wage job for a time or a season if you really need that income to survive and to live. But yeah, it wasn't a pleasant experience for me. I was just like, well, I can't spend forever here, and plus I get paid more over here, so why am I spending so much time here?
Right. And, I'm going to maybe challenge your thinking as well, and maybe some of our listeners' thinking as well. So if you consider the idea, even if you made $100,000 a year, that can be considered to certain people as a minimum wage job or minimum wage activity that they're doing. And for example, in sales, we hear that there's an opportunity to make as much money as you want to, right? So there's two types of sales. You can do salary sales, or you can be a commission sales agent, right? And I'm just going to give you an example of myself. And when I chose to work in the home industry here in Calgary, I had a choice to go salary or go commission, and I really weighed my options, and I chose commissions. And the reason for that was because I had to if I'd chosen a salary, I was going to choose comfort, and I would have had 1 foot in the business and 1 foot out the door. But once I picked commissions, all of it was up to me. So if I wanted to make $100,000 and earn it and work for it, I had to be given that, because I wasn't going to be given it as an employee that was going to just sit at a desk because they really wanted sales, right? But in order for me to make that kind of income, I had to pick an option that allowed it for me, right? So if you're for example, a sales agent making 100,000 and being comfortable making 100,000, you have really no reason to grow past it. And versus, for example, another sales agent that does just as good as you do in a commission-based sales, but now can make 2 to 3 times as much as you because they see the value of their hard work. So they may actually work harder and get better results and make more money and be able to do more stuff with that money as well. So just a little different way of thinking, not just thinking, minimum wage jobs, but even minimum wage thinking, even at higher levels of income as well.
Yeah, I don't think anything that I said is necessarily in direct conflict with that. But the important point that you raise there is perhaps just that people perceive minimum wage as different things. So even though, we have a government perhaps regulated minimum wage, I don't know what it is in Canada anymore, $10, $11. I think they're trying to get it up to $15, or at least the NDP is. But you're right. I think maybe whatever is in your mind, whatever number that's in your head or you believe you're worthy of, is what's minimum wage for a lot of people, because a lot of people have trouble moving past that.
Right. No, you're right. Any other, I guess, thoughts on what we're talking about right now before we switch topics?
Well, one other thing about like turnover, it's not always a minimum wage. It could also be a job that people just really don't like doing all that much, whether it's like cleaning up puke or, something to do with septic tanks and that stuff like that. Might not be a very pleasant job. That might also be, why there's a high turnover, but it could actually pay more in some cases.
Well, true. And you make me think about people who work on farms as well, right? I mean, there's a lot of jobs on farms that a lot of people don't want to do, such as putting your hands in places that you have to put them inside animals. But these are things that need to be done and that people are willing to do. And some people might say, well, I'd never do that. You can pay me enough money. But that's just all in thought process, right? So I think minimum wage activities can be, a thought process problem, not just a doing the work type problem as well. So just kind of a different way of thinking and looking at it as well.
And having done so much behind the scenes work too, like I think it's needed and it's valuable, but it's not always acknowledged. I've often found with some of the projects I'm doing, it's really the people's faces that have their faces on the poster. Those are the people that first hear about the thanks for putting on the event and so on and so forth. But, myself, I might have helped put out chairs. I might have helped set up. I might have, done a lot of the work to make people feel comfortable once they arrive. So that work is no less valid just because it's not acknowledged.
Very well said. No, great point. So one of the things I wanted to bring up was maybe some examples as well. That's kind of the way I took this topic and really thought of examples where we can get our listeners to say, if you're the type of person right now that's excelling and wants to just listen to this information so you can continue to excel, hey, absolutely. I want to use some of my examples to speak to the people that said, hey, you know what? I'm not where I want to be right now, but I want to learn how I can get there. So that's kind of a little bit of how I approach this topic as well. So one of the things I thought of was, instead of watching TV 3 to 6 hours a day after work, maybe investing time in for example, reading a book or listening to an audio CD that can, that's in your business field or you're part of your sector, listening to the business news, which is not a bad thing, especially if you're in business, but maybe focusing on the right kind of information to help you move forward, right? So, watching TV, I thought was, for 3 to 6 hours a day is a minimum wage activity, where watching TV or listening to audio or reading books that can impact your career is not a minimum wage activity.
Well, and that's just like when I was working at that laptop outlet, I was still studying computers. There was no really incentive in that, but I figured I would grow myself. So I was like, okay, well, I'm basically in sales and in laptops. So let's learn about technology and sales. And then I can kind of continue to better myself as I'm working in that job. So again, no added extra incentives for doing that, but I felt it was something I could do myself to grow. And also I already had a pretty solid base of understanding of technology.
Right. And I like that because you went out there and said, I'm going to continue to learn something that's going to make me better in my field. I'm at work. Yeah. Why not learn? And learning doesn't necessarily mean reading. It also means maybe connecting to people from your field, right? And maybe going out for a coffee with somebody that's successful in what you want to do and become, right? So taking out a buddy of yours and say, hey man, I know you're really good at sales. Can you teach me? I want to ask you some questions and make myself better in that as well. Or, if you want to be the best employee, like we were talking about before, right? And just work with a purpose, maybe find somebody at work who has a purpose and find ways to, you don't want to be that person, but find ways to be your own unique person, but using some of the principles that they use in their life and day-to-day activity.
And the boss certainly wasn't going to take any extra steps to train us or send us to a conference or events or anything like that in this case. And I guess that's probably true in a lot of jobs, but certainly in this one. So, it was either take matters into my own hand or not grow at all.
Right. And it's funny, I can hear the dogs upstairs right now.
Yeah,
so
maybe you can hear it too.
Yeah, so we'll see if it makes the outtakes here or the intakes. We'll see what happens. Now, the nice thing too is the other thing I was thinking about was one of the things I notice a lot of people do that's minimum wage thinking or minimum wage activities is going out and buying products and services because they want to have it versus buying products and services they need to have. What are your thoughts?
True, because a lot of things can sort of be lumped in as a luxury category. I don't necessarily think of things that way. I like long-term thinking when it comes to that kind of stuff, but certainly in teaching guitar, well, you might have less students or less clients while the economy's kind of in a downturn because people consider this a luxury rather than a necessity, or at least some people do. Maybe like going to the spa or getting a massage, or sometimes maybe even getting a haircut would all be considered luxuries in times when things are difficult. In the same breath, there's a lot of people that will still go out and get their Starbucks every single day, despite not saying that's good or bad. Starbucks is a company that their vision statement says we foster the human spirit or inspire the human spirit. So, there's something for that. Maybe you do feel good every time you walk into Starbucks and it just helps you get through your day, whatever that day looks like, and you're having a really tough day. But, we have to think smartly about money when it comes to essentials and non-essentials services. What is essential is, I think, investing in yourself is essential. That's one of the most essential things. So books, CDs, you might look upon those as being luxury, but really it might be the thing that takes your career, life, relationships to the next level.
Right. And I think one of the things that I always think about wants versus needs is when people want to take a trip versus do they need to take a trip, right? I mean, yes. I think we all want to go on a vacation. We all want to get away from work. We all want to get away from the people we work with sometimes.
And we probably should take off more days than we typically are in North America.
Absolutely. You go to places like Europe. I think I was talking to a gentleman in England. He said they automatically get 3 weeks or a month. And I was like, what are you talking about? I only get 2 weeks. And he was just dumbfounded. Couldn't believe that, in Calgary or in Canada, North America, we only get 2 weeks off.
And those 2 weeks might be contingent on a ton of factors.
Absolutely. One being putting in the time to earn those 2 weeks versus getting 2 weeks off, right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
More and more companies, I think, are doing that where you have to earn the 2 weeks, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because a lot of people taking advantage of just going to work, taking 2 weeks off and then quitting their jobs too, right? And then never having to pay anything back. But, I look at the wants versus needs, and I look at, again, like I said, with travel is, we want to travel to Hawaii. I think everybody would love to travel to Hawaii or warm destinations. But if it's something we need to do is about like getting away from work, maybe taking a look in closer to our own backyard and, maybe driving 300 kilometers or a couple hundred kilometers to the next closest city or spa destination. Us being in Calgary, we have the ability to go to places like Banff. It's only about an hour, maybe an hour and 20-minute drive from us, but we can be in a completely different environment and experience different things and really find ways to relax. We don't all have to go to Hawaii. I think we all want to go to Hawaii, but what we really need is a getaway. So it's maybe, looking at and weighing the options of, how much money do I have? Where can I go? And not overextending yourself. I know a lot of people are willing to overextend themselves saying, oh, I'll pay it back. You know, I'll put it on my credit card. I'll be able to pay it back in a couple of months. Not really looking at the consequences of what happens when you put stuff on your credit card and you start, you know, getting an 18.9% interest rate, you know, that you got to pay for that trip, right? So that's where I think a lot of that minimum wage activity or minimum wage thinking comes in, saying, oh, I can pay it later versus, hey, you know what? I only have so much money right now. I'm going to go somewhere I can afford to go, not somewhere where I really want to go today.
There's a significant difference between recreation and escape. A lot of people are looking for that escape, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about there. You know, they're getting away from their jobs. They don't want to be there. That might be a whole other problem entirely. A mismatch in the work that you're doing and the work that you would really like to be doing doesn't mean that you aren't meant to work in a job or have a job. Doesn't mean you're meant to automatically become a freelancer or an entrepreneur or start at your own business. But it might mean that, you know, it's not the best fit, maybe culturally in terms of the people, maybe in terms of the work that you're doing, or there could be other factors that just make you go like, well, I need something else. This is too routine, too rote, too many of the same things over and over and over again. A lot of job roles are like that. Maybe it's time for something a little bit different. So I think we all feel like we need that escape every once in a while, but yeah, if that's what you're feeling, then maybe examine and go a little bit deeper into what those reasons are versus recreation, which they obviously look upon in Europe as being essential to someone's longevity in a job. They'd rather keep the people that are in their jobs. They're good workers. So, you know, taking a few weeks off to go to the beach, you know, get some sun and start to feel better so they can perform better at their jobs while they're at their jobs is something they look at. So investing in self. And I think it's just like I said, it's a high priority activity, investing in self, whether it's rest or working out or studying.
Right. And I think, you know, it is about investing in yourself and just finding ways to invest better in yourself too, right? I mean, we'd all love to go to warm countries, but sometimes, you know, like I said, getting away to a small, you know, resort that's maybe an hour away versus 5-6 hour flight away.
Sure.
You know, it's still investing in yourself. It's still investing in your mindset. It's still investing in relaxation. There's different ways to do it, right? And again, sometimes it is nicer to go places like Hawaii or Dominican Republic or, you know, flying somewhere south to Florida or whatnot. You know, being in that sun and being in the sun and shopping and getting into Disneyland or Disney World and, you know, and being a kid again. And there's a place for that. And sometimes we really do need that, but it has to be, in my opinion, the right timing for yourself, and the right, you know, the finances have to make sense. For me, you know, I used to work at a bank for 6 years, and I've seen people overextend themselves and do the things they want to do versus the things they need to, you know, they need to do. So I think there's something really to be thought of. And I do want to get your opinion on this. This is going just a little bit deeper into the hole a little bit. What do you think about people taking trips on points or people collecting points to take trips to go certain places? I know, you know, we have credit cards these days or air miles here in Canada. I'm not sure if they're in the US or not, you know, but we have air miles here where you can go shopping and you can buy stuff and you collect points and then travel on those points. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, if it's something that you can do pretty automatically and by default, you know, by all means, collect those points. Certainly don't overextend yourself on a credit card or something like that just so you can get all those points. I don't really believe in that. And I believe in having as little debt as possible. Doesn't mean you won't have some debt, but little is better for sure. Especially if you're in your business, you're probably going to have some debt. That's just the way things work at times. So you know, there's that consideration. What was the question again?
Well, you know, just looking at different cards that we have, like, you know,
yes.
air miles and credit card points. What are your thoughts on people taking trips on that? And maybe what kind of trips should people take on those based on the points they have? I know there's options, for example, you know, you can use some points and use a lot more cash. You know, what are your thoughts on that if you have any experience in that?
So, you know, sometimes claiming those points can be very difficult. So you go to all this trouble to collect them over months and years and, you know, present your air miles card or whatever whatever it is every single time you're at the grocery store. And then sometimes they make it very difficult for you to actually use them and claim them. But, sometimes you might just have to fight through that and force them, force their hand a bit to let them use those points on your travels. Obviously, if you can save on travel, that's also a good thing. I do believe in that. And, if you can do an all-inclusive trip or whatever and make it more affordable for you without overextending yourself, that's another great thing. I agree with, I think it's Dave Ramsey. His statement was more or less that, points have never made anybody wealthy. And I couldn't agree more.
Perfect. That's kind of where I wanted to ask you. That was actually my next follow-up question to what you're saying, David. I don't think I've ever heard a rich person or an entrepreneur say they've taken trips on credit card points.
Yeah.
They've saved and shopped in certain places. I think they've just lived their life organically. So, some people would fight me on this point and fight you on this point saying, collecting points and working with the system and maybe paying some money for, having a certain type of card is really a minimum wage thinking to get what you want. What are your thoughts on that as well?
So I've only heard like one contrary opinion in the entrepreneurial space. So I will kind of do my best to present that. Basically, their point was, by hacking, getting more points, because there are various ways of doing that, whether it's like consolidating your debt or moving your debt over to another credit card versus another one, or other ways of getting more points, without violating the terms of service or anything like that. And you can get a lot of free stuff that way. Okay. I think that is a fair point. And maybe you could get more trips, or maybe you could get first class service, or a little more food, or maybe, people promote iPads for everything. Free iPads. Come and get our free iPads. Like, I think if you spent a few weeks online just entering those contests, you could probably get yourself a free iPad pretty easily. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was a thing for a while, right? It's not, maybe less of a thing now. So I agree. In general, why waste so much time and effort and energy thinking about points when you could really just be thinking about what's my next product? What's the next service I could introduce that's going to bring in thousands of dollars versus a few points that's going to get me, a couple of miles in the air.
Right. And that's kind of why I wanted to ask you, right? Because I know there's two ways of thinking about it. I've had cards where I do get points, and I've had cards where I've used the points and taken, trips on them, and I've taken great trips on them. But I really just wanted to get your experience as an independent entrepreneur as well. And, someone who's been kind of working in a space where, it's not necessarily the easiest space when especially working in music, but it's also finding ways to get ahead of the curve and still be able to do the things you want to do versus the things you need to do, right, all the time. So I just really want to get your opinion on it. And I know our listeners probably, might be one way or the other, right? A lot of our listeners will have credit cards that have points on it and they collect them. And some people say, I don't even care about the points. I don't want to pay an extra fee to collect these points. Because again, a lot of times these are fee-based cards as well, right? So spending money to attain something, is that really the best way to get points, right?
No.
Typically, I would say no too, because you're buying the points realistically, or you're paying an interest or a premium to buy points to be able to take a trip as well, right? But there's two levels of thought on that as well.
By default, like I collect them, but you go to somewhere like Shoppers Drug Mart, because it just doesn't take any extra effort. But you go to somewhere like Shoppers Drug Mart, and then, what is this good for? I would ask them, and they go, well, you get points, and I'm like, what are points good for? Well, you get stuff. What stuff? It's so non-specific that I could really care less. There was one time I used my Airplan miles to get a camera instead of going on a trip. Okay, so I got myself a crappy digital camera, even by those days standards. So there's stuff you can get, and I think they'd almost rather you use it on stuff rather than on flights, because flights are more expensive, and stuff is that's where all the money is made, because it's it doesn't really cost them anything to get it in, probably, or they have partnerships with other companies that allow them to promote those specific products. So if you have points, maybe try using them on travel instead of stuff, because you're not really getting anything good usually. But you could maybe find the occasional thing you really need right now that could benefit you with points.
Yeah, I love that point. You do say a very good thing too, right? I know typically to take the travel miles, it's going to be an easier way than buying a camera, right? For some reason, it costs you 3 times more points to get something that, you know, you can use like a camera than taking a trip. So, I mean, understanding how to use that points as well, if you're going to use them
Yes,
and buy
absolutely.
and, you know, and have those points to use and want to use them, then learn how to use those points properly as well, right? And make the right decisions with those points, because again, making the right decisions comes to, I think, either doing things because you want them or because you need them, right? So,
and to your point about like getting away to a retreat, that's like maybe an hour away. Like we live in Calgary, so literally we have like Canmore and Banff and Lake Louise within a few hours distance, maybe less than that. So, you know, those are all, we take them for granted, to be honest, living here, but you know, they are great getaways and they are destinations for a lot of people.
Well, absolutely. And you know, just kind of a little off topic, but we do have, you know, lots and lots of people, lots of tourists that come to the Rocky Mountains and visit Calgary, and go to the mountains and enjoy what the springs and the hotels and the scenery has to show them, and all the different memories that they create when they go there, right? So, I mean, it is an interesting fact that we do have in our backyard, and not everybody does have what we have. But I mean, wherever our listeners are living right now, there are probably places like that within, you know, let's call it a 3-hour radius of where you live, right? Unless you live somewhere totally remote, like a desert or something, you may not have anything. But,
Australia?
Yeah, maybe all of Australia, potentially. Let us know. I'd love to know what's there. And
well, you got beaches everywhere, right?
No, there you go. So eventually, every 3 hours, any direction, 3 hours, I could probably get to a beach, is what you're saying. Hey?
Maybe, you know, ish. Haven't lived there, so I don't know, but yeah.
No, but if anybody wants to buy me a ticket, I'd love to go.
Yeah, we should go to Super Fast Business, man. I think we should definitely commit to doing that in the next year or two, and go and meet James and all those cool guys that are out there and learn lots about business.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You know, I also wanted to talk about how little thinking is involved in minimum wage activities or jobs, and kind of the advantages and disadvantages of that. So when I was working at that laptop outlet retailer, it actually gave me a lot of time to think about my next moves, as far as what was I doing in terms of building a business? What was I doing in terms of building my financial future? I just joined network marketing around the time, so already I was being prompted to think about a lot of these things and how I was going to make a way forward for myself. So that's one of the advantages. There's so little thinking involved, and it's so automatic after a point. Like, I was only there 6 months, and you know, after a month or two, it's like nothing new to do ever. You do a sale and you ring things up, and if you have nothing to do, then you clean the store, and then the boss says, well, the store's clean, forget about the cleaning the store, come and have a look at this laptop and fix this laptop. I mean, there's literally never anything to do besides maybe one or two things at most. He just made it sound like there was 3 or 4 or 5 things to do. and that was a minimum wage job. So I think it will afford you the ability to think about your future if you are in a minimum wage job. And so that's not bad, because you can earn a little bit of money while you're thinking critically about where you are and where you want to be.
Right. And I like that idea of what you said. You know, I think a lot of people who are just in high school right now or going into college, typically, not all the time, but have, you know, lower paying jobs while they're in school and can put in the hours to, you know, complete the education that they're looking to complete. So they need something that's not going to put a lot of stress on them. That's something that'll give them a little extra spending money in their back pocket, maybe pay for school that way as well. So sometimes they do take that minimum wage job up front so they can have a better position as soon as they graduate, or if they're in the middle of, you know, working, you know, starting their own business or whatever, and they just want to have something that's super easy, you know, not really, a lot of thought process takes place. It's, you know, it's minimum thinking when they're at work. It's really not going to mentally tax them. Then they can go home and really work on their own business plan. So, I mean, those are great jobs to have if that's kind of where you are. But I mean, looking at minimum wage jobs also is looking at the activities that you get to do at those jobs, right? I know one of the things, the reason I had taken jobs that required me to make a commission and work for my commission was so I never got complacent in what I was doing, right? Because I found that when I had jobs that were salary based, and I haven't had a minimum wage job in years since I first started working around 16, 17 years old, right? But since then, I've always had the idea to think, if I'm going to have a salary, what else can I learn at that job? Because you're right. Once you get to know your job, it really is super easy. Even working at a bank, it was really easy. People came in, they gave me money. People came in, they wanted money, right? It was always trying to find ways to maybe talk to them, or, I noticed if they had lots and lots of money in the bank account, try to find ways for them to invest, or talk to one of our investors that we had at the banks, or see what they were planning to do with the money. But I was always trying to keep my mind thinking in different ways, because that was the only way I was going to continue to learn, right? So, I mean, it's also taking that time to figure out what your next steps are. I think you're 100% right. And that's what I did, right? I really wanted to learn how the banking system worked and how it could apply to me. So when I left the bank, 6 years later, how could I apply all that information I had learned into my own life?
Yeah, and it really wasn't that bad. Like, I was there again 6 months, so like I still had lots of energy left after leaving. I felt good because I'd been thinking about my future and envisioning my future, thinking positive thoughts, making a plan for what was ahead. So like it was a positive experience. What was negative about it was just the fact that it was so routine, and it wasn't ever going to be the best use of my time, abilities, knowledge, and everything else. And another major, disadvantage of how little thinking is involved is exactly what you said, Maveen, which is complacency. You could totally become complacent in the fact that you don't have to think about your job. You could do it with your brain tied behind your back, and
your brain be tied behind your back.
No, it cannot. Not literally, it cannot. So, but if you find yourself in that situation, you might just become fairly comfortable with that, and next thing you're not even thinking about your future. You're not making any plans. You're not thinking about your next job, and then you're fired from that job because you're not thinking. You're not thinking about what the right move is next. So that would be a major disadvantage of not being, so little thinking involved in a job like that.
Right. And, just to give you the same kind of contrary to what I was saying about the bank, I've worked at jobs where, I was an underwriter for almost about a year and a half, I think. And, I was able to complete my daily task in about 4 hours. I could complete 8 hours worth of work on a daily basis, right? So
yes.
It wasn't really a challenging job. So I'd always go to my manager and look for new activities or new projects I can always take. And, I was always trying to challenge myself and grow, because I knew if I wanted to continue to grow in that field, I had to be able to get out of my comfort zone, ask for more work, look for ways to get better and better. And if I didn't, I could definitely sit at my desk for, 4 hours a day and, play video games on my phone, I guess. But really, what was that going to do for my future, right? And that's kind of the thought process I had. And, I know a lot of people right now that are listening to this show saying, you know what, I go onto Facebook, and there's nothing wrong with going onto Facebook and seeing what's going on. But if you're going on that social media more than one time or 2 times a day at work, you probably could be doing something else. You're just being a little complacent and not really wanting to do it. Maybe you're just trying to spread out the work so it looks like you're busy, right? But I think people who are entrepreneurial, have a business kind of sense, even if they don't own that job, will continue to want to do a better job than they're already doing, because they understand that, if they get let go from this job, they're going to take all the things that they've learned and take it to their next position, and even be able to get a better position when they go to a different company, and not just get the same position, making the same kind of money. They can really learn and improve their, status, I guess, in life, if they were to move.
It's another thing I remember about my job over at the laptop computer place. I would sometimes be on the computer, and my boss would sometimes catch me, but like really there was nobody around. There was nothing to do a lot of the time, very few customers walking in, and the only way we'd sell anything was primarily on walk-ins or repairs, which was probably the main source of income for that business. He would caution me and say, don't do that. You're don't play games. I was never once playing games on the computer. Can you think of what I was doing, Maveen?
Probably researching ways to get out of there.
Yeah. I was like blogging, I was planning, I was thinking about my future, I was looking at websites. I was, just got entered the network marketing organization. I was researching what that was going to mean and what the product was like, and thinking about how I could sell it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there was not a moment spent on games. And even if there was, like, why would I want to play solitaire for the 1000th time?
No. And, one thing I do like that your boss said to you was, your boss, regardless of him knowing what you were or were not doing on the computer, I think his mindset was in the right place.
Yeah.
He's giving you great advice. Hey, don't just sit on the computer and play games. What I think your boss is really trying to say, maybe not in those words, was really trying to say, hey, you know what? If you need something to do, you want to learn more, come talk to me. I can teach you stuff that, standing at the front counter will not teach you. I think the principles behind it were great, but he probably just didn't give you that kind of message. And nor did you, I think, at that time and where you were in life, care about what your boss was able to teach you, because I think you'd already had started moving forward in thought process and wanting to do something bigger than working at a computer depot for the rest of your life.
Knowing him, he definitely did not mean that, and he would not have taught me anything.
Okay.
Yeah. But no,
I try to give him some credit.
I appreciate your optimism.
Yeah, I try to see it half full as much as I can.
No, that's great. Let's leave it at that. Yeah, he was really trying to teach me something, and he was trying to get me to come to him to ask questions. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Too funny. So one of the things that I also wrote down for, now this might be a little bit different again, depending on where you are as a business owner, or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're how much money you have too. This example here is going to really depend on where you are statically in life. I don't know if that's an actual word, but where
statically?
You are statically. So
yes, that's
where your
word.
Status is in life.
Oh, well, not to mean that.
Statically.
No, that means a different thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Status-wise.
Status-wise, yes. So one of the things I thought about was, if you're an employee of a company versus if you are an owner of the company, you may do something a little different. So if you're an employee of a company, a minimum wage activity may be eating out every single day.
Sure.
Versus packing a lunch and taking that to work. I know I've worked in many corporations and in many corporate world for the last probably about 10, 15 years. I definitely have seen it more and more. I think I was in the corporate world for almost 20 years altogether here from the age of 18. And I've seen many, many people come to work every single day and buy lunch, buy coffees, 2 or 3 a day. And I started, mentally calculating how much money these, great people that I work with were spending. And I started noticing they're spending, $2, $3 on 1 cup of coffee, times that by 2 a day, plus add, the lunch that they were spending. And lunch is probably somewhere in that $10 to $12 range a day. So I started doing calculations. I said, well, okay, let's give them a benefit of the doubt. They're spending about $15 a day on food. And some people, about $20 a day. But somewhere in that range. And I multiply that by 5 days. And then I multiply that by 4 weeks in a month. And I noticed that these guys are spending $200, $300, $400, $500 in some instances a month. And then would complain, oh man, I don't have enough money to go do these certain things, and I wish the company would pay me more, or whatever, right? And absolutely, if you do the good job, your company should pay you more, but you should also be the steward of your own money, and that's something I do believe, and really make good decisions with your own money. So even if they had implemented packing a lunch 1 day a week, that 1 day a week times that by a month would save them $60, $70, maybe $100. So just even small changes, they would see huge impacts.
Money definitely requires long-term thinking. And I know I keep going back to the same example, but yeah, when I was working at that laptop retailer, and I really have limited retail experience, guys, so I don't work in stores, but, sometimes I would, didn't really have much of a choice because I was often working, I think it was like 10 to 2 or something like that. So like they would open at 10 and I wouldn't necessarily have a lot of time, I'd have to go and prepare for teaching at night. I had like 5 part-time jobs or something like that at the time. So I wouldn't necessarily have a lot of time to think about lunch between those times. If I gotten up earlier, maybe I think I did bring lunch on occasion, but not always. And so I would be going over to, Quiznos to get myself a sandwich, and I'd be thinking about, holy crap, like that's 1 hour's wage, on minimum wage. Like that's insane, and I'm only earning, 4.5 hours, 5 hours worth of money at the store to begin with. So, it's 1/4 or 1/5 of my day's income. That's crazy.
Right. And now just looking at the opposite side of it, where let's say you're a manager, a CEO of a business, or an entrepreneur who's very successful, you say, you know what, I can write my meals off. I can write a percentage of my meals off. So, there's nothing wrong with me going out and eating out every day and meeting new people and networking. So there's a different way to look at it, right? And I do believe it comes in at where you are in life. And that's kind of what I was trying to say, status wise, where you are in life, and I put that in quotations, right? Because just because you're eating out every day doesn't mean you can afford to, even as a business owner, a CEO, an entrepreneur. It just sometimes is you're trying to keep up with the Joneses as well, right? I guess people know their pocketbooks better than other people know their pocketbooks. If you're making the right decisions based on why you're eating out every day or once a week or 3 times a week or whatever that is, I know some people who eat out not just one meal a day, they eat all 3 or 4 meals a day out every single day. And they think, and they wonder why they can't afford to pay their rent at the end of the month, or why their credit card bills are so high and they're getting just, beat up on interest rates and whatnot. But it's just the way they're thinking and maybe been programmed to eat out a lot. I mean, a totally different conversation, but we bombarded by commercials that say, hey, go try this new burger or try these new fries and try this new meal that we put together at our favorite restaurant. And we want to, because hey, we enjoy these places that we go to, and there's a new frappuccino out that we want to go to Starbucks and try around Halloween all the time,
right?
Whatever it is, but we're being bombarded by the marketing and we fall for it, right? And it's kind of really knowing those activities that we do are hindering our success with the amount of money that we make, right?
That's exactly right. And I wouldn't go too crazy. Also, as much as I do believe in the power of networking and meeting people and building new connections, I don't think it's something you necessarily need to do all the time. I've talked about letting people surprise you. Well, the connections that I've built up over the years, I'm still consistently surprised by them and how they become clients and how they become supporters and investors in who I am. So it's really being the kind of person that's reliable, trustworthy, the kind of person that's endorsable. And if you're the kind of person that has those principles and values and integrity as a person, I think you'll start to see it doesn't happen instantaneously, but over the years, if you continue to build up that credit with others, then you'll begin to see that they'll also trust you with new projects and different tasks that they would love to have you do, and something that you love to do, probably.
Absolutely, right. And no, I love the way you put that together. So
awesome. Any other points?
Yeah, I got my last one here. So it's people who focus their attention in many different directions, I believe sometimes have minimum wage thinking, versus people who focus their thoughts in one direction. So for example, if you're starting a business, focus on the main parts of your business. Don't focus on all the different aspects of your business. Because I know as entrepreneurs, we really want to sometimes get going. We want our business to take off, but we don't think about all the simple steps, like the analogy called KISS, KISS, keep it simple,
stupid,
right? So, or smarty, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Smarty's better.
Yeah. So, but we look at that, and sometimes because we're really excited, we really want to do everything. So we start doing this, and we start doing that, and we start calling this person, and we call China, and we want to get the product, and we call our shop, and we want to start making connections, and we start doing all the different things. We put our focus and all our energy all over the place instead of focusing on the goal. Okay, our goal is to be successful. For example, let's say if it's to open up a retail store, then take all the steps, but go slowly, go one step at a time, and focus on being the best in each one of those steps, right? But I know I've done that too, where I get super excited sometimes, and I want to get everything done at the same time, and I have to remind myself to slow down and just take one step at a time, and I will eventually get to where I want to be, right? If it's worth taking the journey, then it's worth taking the journey and getting there in 3 days. It's also worth taking the journey then and getting there in 5 days.
You know, it reminds me a bit of, and I think this was from Jeff Folson's book, The Slight Edge. He talks about, I think he wanted to build some kind of connection with a German company. So him and his team made it a habit. It was just a habit that they did all the time, was ask every day with people that they knew, do you know a German? That's what they did, and eventually they were able to build up this business deal. But it started there, and it's such a simple thought when you think about it. Like, how could a multi-million-dollar, I don't remember the exact details, but how could the deal like that come together just by asking a simple question to everybody you meet and everybody you know every single day? Well, you'd be amazed. That might be the starting point, and sometimes we just think too complicated about the things that we need to do to move ourselves forward, and sometimes it is a simple question that you can ask others.
Right. Wow. What a powerful question is. Again, we've talked about that too before, asking the right type of question based on the results you're looking for, right? Yeah. And obviously these people were looking to do business with a certain type of person or certain group. And of course, they didn't get overly complicated. They didn't start running in through the phone book and looking for the perfect last names to start calling people. They just did what was natural to them as they were going through their day-to-day life. I think they just said, hey, do you know someone with this background? Hey, do you know someone that's German? Right. And they would then go ahead and find out. And people say, yeah, I do, or no, I don't. And hey, just keep asking as many people as possible until they could build their business to where they want to be. Also, the cool part was they're building their business based on people that they trusted as well. Maybe even if they were networking, you know, they're building that trust and able to find ways to ask these great questions and building those relationships and keeping them strong. So even when they were finding the people they were looking to do business with, they can also keep their other, you know, relationships nice and strong as well.
Also, I think this was probably before the internet. So that's one of the reasons why they would have gone about it the way they did. Maybe right. They would have taken a different approach if the internet and email and all that kind of stuff was available, but maybe not. And like, I think there's so much value in that lesson even today, because we have a tendency to not want to like connect with people directly or ask them. But, you know, people are pretty fascinating when you give them a chance to be. And so sometimes taking a quote unquote old school approach might be the better way, because now you built up these friendships and relationships and connections that you may not have otherwise. It depends on the project, obviously. And, you know, we think so much about efficiency, but sometimes efficiency is taking that old school analog approach.
No, you're right. And I know some of the conversations we've had, and a lot of conversations I've heard on different podcasts as well, is, you know, if, for example, social media, you know, now that we're in a social media age where we're, you know, we have so many different options, from Snapchat to Instagram to Facebook to Twitter and all the other ones, right? It's, you know, we tend to have a focus for about a few seconds on each social media. None of us really spend the time to really understand how we can be great at the one or two social medias that we choose to do business in, right? So, but a lot of times right now we're bombarded with so many different ones, and we want to be really good at all of them. So our attention is all over the place. We don't necessarily try, but if we actually focused a few minutes, and, you know, I hear a lot of different stories. Some people say Facebook is better. Some people say Twitter is better. It really depends on, I think, the industry you're in and where your group of people that you're looking to do business with are interacting. LinkedIn can be better. It really just depends on what type of business you have, but get good at where you are, right? And focus on those little things and build from there. You know, as soon as we start focusing in many different directions, we'll never be able to focus in one direction, right? It's just like, you've probably heard this as well too, David, and maybe even our listeners can understand this too. So you know, we've all been to a circus, or we've all seen a circus on TV or whatnot, right? And I think the most coolest one is when you see the lion trainer in the middle of the cage with the lion, and you wonder, how can somebody stand face to face, head to head, toe to toe with a lion? And then you kind of see all the little things that the trainer is doing. But what is the first thing the trainer typically did in these old school circus videos we'd watch? Is they'd grab a chair, and there's 4 points on a chair, and the lion can't really focus on any one of those 4 points. It keeps looking at all 4 points, and the trainer, through trickery, and I'll put that in quotations, can do and make the lion do what it wants. If it wants it to sit in one place, it'll confuse it, so it doesn't think in many different. It makes itself think in many different directions versus in one. If there was only one point on that chair, the lion would know what to attack. It would attack that one point. Because there's 4 of them, it doesn't really know where to go. And then you start seeing things like, and I still don't get how they do this. Maybe somebody can tell me, but you'll see the trainer walk up to lion, put his head in the lion's mouth and take it out, and people clap. And to me, that's crazy. But it's the only way I can think of it does it confuses the lion. Obviously, there's a trust built with it as well, but it's confusing the lion to think in so many different directions because there's so many different things going on. It really doesn't know how to react. And I think if we use that analogy in what we do in our daily life, we can really see how we're putting too much energy sometimes into the wrong places, and maybe needing to think about the better places we can put the energy to get the results we're looking for.
We pay a lot of attention to the gold rush. And I think we're told to pay attention to it as well. I remember like 20 years ago, I had friends in like IT. So, IT was this huge money mine at the time. And in some ways it still is. I think as long as the technology continues to increase in complexity and there is human involvement required, then the price for IT will still be high, and those experts will still be paid a lot of money to do what they do. But what about social media? Well, social media, anybody can do it. I think there was a pretty significant price on social media too, and maybe there still is in a lot of industries, but that's one of those areas where it could, devalue over time. When you really think about it, because just about anybody can post, anybody can schedule a post, anybody can post an image or a video that they're told to do. So if it's one thing if your job is to create all the content, I see tremendous value in that, but it's an entirely different thing if your responsibility is just to post the things that the company creates. So, some things over time can be reduced to minimum wage activities as well.
Right. And, more and more, I think the way technology goes, it allows us to do more things for ourselves. I know one of the things you were just talking about is having a website and posting stuff. And, with the advances in WordPress, WordPress, I think has been around now almost 10, maybe 15 years, something like that.
Something like that.
Right. And more as they keep getting better and better is giving people the more flexibility to do things themselves. And, sometimes it's a great place to start, for example. If you're just starting off with not a lot of money and you're brand new entrepreneur and wanting to start your own website, I know these are things I've learned from you, right? And you've kind of taught me a little bit on how to use WordPress and why I'd want to do certain things. And these are things I'm wanting to learn. But again, we've also talked big picture and said, I don't necessarily want to learn how to post everything. I don't want to necessarily post all my own stuff. In the short term, absolutely, right? If I'm going to control my brand and understand my brand, of course I wanted to. And I need to learn how to do that, because in order for me to be able to pay somebody else down the road to do it, I first have to know and understand what my own vision is and what my vision for my website will be. So exactly how I want things posted, exactly what I want things to look like once they're posted as well.
It's very helpful.
Right. And so you do kind of need to know. So you do have to sometimes learn the things that are the basics and the standards. But as soon as you get really good at it and you're starting to make money, if you continue to do the things that you were doing, you don't give yourself the time to go and pursue bigger and better things. Right. And so that can also sometimes, I understand a lot of people want to save money and they want to do stuff, and so do I, right? But sometimes you do have to pay professionals who can do things for you, maybe better than you even, and take advantage of what's available, so you can then go focus your attention on maybe developing better content. So, maybe developing courses, maybe developing classes, or putting on seminars and having speakers come in, or going to places where other people are putting on seminars, and maybe having the time to go on different podcasts and do some talking and really get your own name and build your brand and have people come, right? So you do need a team of people, I think, to help develop where you want to be.
Yeah, and sometimes there is also value in not getting too good at the little things. So there it kind of goes both ways. I agree. Like if you want to, a lot of the times it's good to know exactly what goes into doing something. I know that James Franco even talks about that. He does the whole own the race course thing. Well, it's a huge amount of human effort, and he did it himself at one point, and then he was able to delegate it. But that is like a pretty important piece of his business, is the content thing that he has going on. But yeah, I think the opposite lesson can also be true, in the sense of not becoming too good at the little things, because you could end up doing those little things the rest of your life.
Right. And I think that's where people get stuck sometimes, right? They figure they got really good at it. They can also get comfortable in doing the little things really well, right? Because sometimes we build our identity on those little things that we get really, really good at doing. And we think that no one else can do it better than us. And we kind of stop ourselves from growing and achieving the levels that we've really gone out to achieve, right? And I think that really has to do with our mindset, our thought process, and understanding and where we're going as well.
Yeah, exactly. What else? Is there anything else?
No, you know what? I'm good. I got all my points across. Have you gotten your points across?
Absolutely, I have.
Awesome, man. So I guess we could do a summary and on kind of what we thought about maybe some of the most important points, maybe some of the things we should have our listeners take away.
Well, I think, we assume that a lot of you want to take things to the next level. So being, first of all, just aware of the various activities that would maybe require no more than minimum wage, and at times maybe even less, depending on the outsourcer or the freelancer that's handling the job. Because if you become aware of that, you can begin to maybe delegate it, maybe automate it. And if it's not necessary in your life and you're just kind of stubbornly insisting on it, then eliminate it completely and get rid of it, so it's not on your to-do list. You have a finite amount of time and energy and willpower every single day, and we have to be on guard for that, and we have to look after ourselves and take care of our time and make sure that we're not spending it where it's not really going to bear fruit. And I'm speaking to myself as much as anybody else when I say that, but there's only so much you can do with one person. You're going to want to build a team around you over time. So systematize, automate, eliminate, or just figure out an alternative. And maybe if it's essential, then keep it and keep doing it and make it a part of your habits and routine until you can delegate it.
Right on. Not only were you speaking to yourself, you really do speak to me, right? Because I know a lot of things you say, I listen to, I take to heart, and I really try to process those things. I don't necessarily agree with everything you say, and nor do you agree with everything I say. But a lot of what you just said right now, I totally agree with you. And we should look for ways, I believe, to get better at what we do and be the best at what we want to do, right? I know not everybody listening to this show thinks they should be better or, thinks they want to be better. And that's fine as well, right? I mean, a lot of people are going to be happy where they are, and they may only take a small parts of this show and say, that's the only thing that's applicable. Maybe, I will start taking a lunch once a week instead of eating out every single day. And even something small like that I think if people take even a small point like that, they'll be able to see huge differences in a year. How much money could you save at $20 one day a week? At the end of the year, you almost got $1,000. So, I mean, that's huge. And what could you do with $1,000? Maybe take a trip to Hawaii, right? So now you can actually use cash versus taking points, right?
Yeah.
Now it's just about talking about taking small changes and seeing big results, right? And I think that's exactly what minimum wage activity does. It kind of boxes you in to only think a certain way. As soon as you start thinking outside of those boxes, and I know that's something that a lot of people throw out. Oh, I think outside the box, right? And it's got its place for that type of thinking. But I think as soon as you start thinking outside the box, again in quotations, because I don't know how else to say it right now, you will start succeeding and finding ways to succeed past where you are. Just like you said, I think the people listening to this show are looking for ways to be better and maybe find different thought processes and mindsets that they can implement into their life. If we have people who are just beginning their journey, or people who are in the middle of their journey, or people who are definitely way past and at levels that we want to get to, I'd love to hear from you guys and see what you guys are being impacted by and how you guys are enjoying the show and what really stands out for you, right? Because I mean, we can only make this happen as a reality based on what everybody is taking away from it.
And in Jim Rohn's famous words, you got to be more valuable.
I love it.
All right. We look forward to interacting with you. Check us out at usingyourpower.com. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.